Welcome to another installment of Where Was God? And today we're going to take a look at Was God at Mar-a-Lago and see if there's anything we can learn from that. Well, there's a number of things to look at on that raid on Mar-a-Lago. On August 8th, 2022, FBI agents raided and searched Mar-a-Lago, President Trump's personal home. What'd they find? Weeks and months later, no one knows. To date, the FBI and justice system has been keeping the search warrant and list of materials they were searching for and documents they found a secret, which has a number of implications we got to take a look at. The FBI claims the search warrant contains information vital to national security. So nothing is being released. Most people believe a search warrant has to be presented before a search can be conducted. The lack of a search warrant raised a number of questions. Did a search warrant exist? What was that search warrant? Why is it being kept a secret? In the beginning, news sources agreed the raid had something to do with papers Trump and his family were going through to donate to the presidential library or were keeping for personal reasons. That was based on stories verified by Donald Trump, his son, his attorney, as well as key figures involved in disputes over what Trump was allowed to display in the national or presidential library and what he was legally able to keep for his own personal use. Since those papers were destined to be viewed by the general public in the presidential library, that story didn't fit the narrative the left media wanted to feed to the general public. With no sources to name, the left jumped on stories about Trump stealing nuclear codes. Remember that? Since those codes had been changed and required specific equipment and keys to use, the media changed their stories a number of times, which isn't new for the media these days, which tells us the raid and news coverage was not well planned or served another purpose. Well, what was happening at that time? With the 2022 primary elections wrapping up and midterm campaigns beginning, we can piece together the puzzle as it unfolded. All the information on the raid is being withheld, but that didn't stop the media from coming up with their usual list of undisclosed witnesses telling a host of different stories. Notice all the papers and witnesses were kept secret for security reasons. The question is, whose security? In one story, an undisclosed witness claims to have had access to the video camera network inside of Trump's house. Well, that says a lot for the Secret Service assigned to protect Trump. For that sprang stories of secret meetings and documents. The question needs to be asked, how many security cameras are able to display a legible document from across a room? And if that undisclosed witness had those videos, why haven't pictures of those documents been verified? Well, needless to say, the media has been up to business as usual, publishing stories with absolutely no verification. The longer the search warrant is delayed, the longer the media had to publish whatever they wished. People were not smart enough to question their sources or ask how the media is getting their hands on documents they claim are a national security risk. In the bigger scheme of things, the media claims to have access to classified documents they claim President Trump should not be reading. Matter of fact, they claim President Trump should be in prison just for reading those. Well, take a moment to ask, Why it's against the law for a former president to have or read those documents, but it's okay for the media to have access to them. Nothing is adding up in any of the left media reports. Seems rather strange to have an unnamed source supplying video of inside Trump's house with absolutely no evidence to support the story, while Eric Trump announced he has video of the raid. The media was not in any hurry to obtain any of that video from Eric Trump or to show any of it. If the media was concerned with the truth, they would be pushing for Eric Trump's video. Well, what's more important to the media today? The truth, making money from internet ads, or working with Soros to take over the world by supplying lies to the general public? That's only one phase of their plan, but it's one they really love to concentrate on. Why are they so obsessed with lying, like all the time? We also have a question about the FBI planting bugs inside Trump's house. All those stories center on one subject: surveillance. The left media claims to have video from inside Trump's house. Eric Trump claims to have video of the raid. There is the possibility the FBI planted bugs inside Trump's house, right under the noses of the Secret Service. All that surveillance pales to what God sees. There's no doubt God saw every plan hatched and witnessed every action taken. All that information has been properly recorded by God, and we may have to wait until we're all in heaven to know the truth. But is this an incident we'll ever question when we're in heaven? No one knows how God will reveal those sins or if we'll ever see them. What good would it do for us to review the sins of the world when we lived through them and witnessed the effects of those sins? All we know is God has two sets of books. One contains a list of those who are saved, and the other book contains a list of those who will face judgment. That's a book of a list of all their sins. It almost seems like that's another way the devil is trying to play God. God has two sets of books, and the devil has two sets of standards here on earth. Well, let's take a look at a portion of the judgment system. I watched as thrones were put in place, and the Ancient One sat down to judge. His clothing was white as snow, his hair like purest wool. He sat on a fiery throne with wheels of blazing fire, and the river of fire was pouring out, flowing from his presence. Millions of angels ministered to him. Many millions stood to attend him. Then the court began its session, and the books were open. And I saw a great white throne, and one sitting on it. The earth and sky fled from his presence, but they were found no place to hide. I saw the dead, both great and small, standing before God's throne, and the books were open, including the book of life, and the dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books. Well, that's a combination of Daniel 7 and Revelation 20. Well, most people believe those who are lost will face a trial, and during that trial, a list of their sins will be revealed as evidence. Of course, there will be little defense to offer against that list of sins. Popular belief tells us we will someday, somehow, see those sins, and a lot of questions will be answered. We may be able to see every backroom deal, every evil plan being plotted and carried out, like Mar-a-Lago. Most people imagine themselves in heaven, watching all that unfold and saying, "I told you so, I told you so." But will that ever happen? There's little in the Bible describing the actual judgment process and a step-by-step procedure God will follow. We're given a few key details, but only enough to piece together a formal hearing, much like a courtroom proceeding here on earth. Maybe it boils down to a lot of guesswork and personal interpretations of what is in the Bible. Most views on the judgment process have been obscured by legend and factions using the judgment system or the judgment process as a scare tactic to raise funds and control the masses. I mean, when you talk about the left controlling, the church has been doing it for a long time. And for what? Same reasons the left is trying to control the earth. For money. In reality, we can't be certain we will ever see what is written in those books. Many assume because God is totally honest and has nothing to hide, we will be allowed to examine those books, and we will have an eternity to do it. Now, some people believe God will present the history of this world in some type of panoramic view far beyond any human technology. In one book, Paul tells us we will judge angels. When one of you has a dispute with another believer, how dare you file a lawsuit and ask a secular court to decide the matter instead of taking it to other believers? Don't you realize that someday we believers will judge the world? And since we're going to judge the world, can't you decide even those little things among yourselves? Don't you realize that we will judge angels? So you should surely be able to resolve ordinary disputes in this life. That's First Colossians chapter 6. Well, there's a lot to look at in the judgment system, and we got to kind of piece this together bit by bit out of the Bible, but who's taking the time? And we got to consider the fact, what good would it do to sit in heaven reviewing the sins of this world? What good would it do for us to see all the people behind the radical factions of today, with all their plans, who is in charge, who worked for them, how they made their payoffs, and all the other details like COVID, the $22 trillion Congress spent in 2021 and 2022, and how they caused record inflation. We also have to consider the fact sinners and all their sins will be totally consumed by fire forever. If those sins were destroyed by fire, why would we spend time reviewing them when we have everything in heaven to experience and enjoy? There is another belief that the 1,000-year period between the end of the world and our return to this world is a time when we're going to sit down and review the records of people we won't find in heaven. And that's also a time to look at what Satan's angels did behind the scenes. We all speculate on that, but are we ever going to be able to see what really happened when we're in heaven? Whatever the real story is, it takes a lot of time to collect all the scripture, put it together, and try to figure out exactly what happened and in what order. And as people are always trying to do, figure out when it will happen. Well, I've written a couple of books on the judgment process. Take my word for it. Not too many people are concerned about God's judgment process. As a matter of fact, a lot of people try ignoring it or hiding from that fact because they have a fear. Even though it is happening in our time, why would they suddenly be interested in the judgment process once they find out they're saved? On one hand, There is too much to enjoy in heaven once we get there to worry much about what went on behind the scenes in this world. Maybe there will be a way to review every detail, and maybe there won't be. Maybe we'll have jobs in heaven to review those records. On the other hand, you wouldn't want to waste a whole lot of time imagining what it would be like to face a trial before God. Will people be allowed to plead guilty and get the trial over quickly? Will people be allowed to demand a review of the evidence? Or will everyone have to suffer through a review of their entire life with God showing them every sin they're responsible for? If that was the case, we'll get a first-hand experience of how God uses time in a manner we're not familiar with. How much time would it take to conduct a trial for the billions of people who lived on this earth? No one even has an accurate number. With 365 days a year, if each trial lasted one day, how many years would it take to review the life of every single person on earth? Of course, we know some people will have many more sins to review than others. And when we think of it, it will only take a moment of thought to realize we really don't want to see the sins many of those people committed. Mar-a-Lago was just one example showing how the left tried to frame Trump, waiting until he went on vacation and raiding his home with no search warrant, denying a former president every constitutional right. They intended to send a message. If they could do that to a former president, what chance do we stand? There are, of course, dozens of examples before and after Mar-a-Lago. The two impeachment trials. Trump's trial with some woman who came out of the woodwork, presented zero evidence, lost the case, but the judge awarded her $5 million because Trump hurt her feelings defending himself. I mean, this is what this world comes to. Then we have those charges from Bragg's in New York that resulted in Trump's arrest. All those recent events have one thing in common. They all have something to do with the judicial system. With so many factors pointing to the judicial system, have we considered the fact those events are showing a pattern? God repeats himself throughout the Bible to draw our attention to details. Is the repetition of events showing us to take a look at the judgment process in heaven? Conservative Christians all over the world are waiting for their judicial system to kick in, arrest, and put criminals in trial. Here in the U.S., the double standards of the present administration release obvious criminals the same day. Well, the January 6 prisoners have been sitting in prison for over 2 years with no trial and zero evidence. Mar-a-Lago showed how the left jumps to a judgment and makes up charges with zero evidence. Matter of fact, all out lies. Well, so did January 6, 2021. We all saw how everything was so pre-written, staged, theatrical. They even hired a producer, everything else. They spliced together how many thousands of hours of video to show what they wanted to show in just a few minutes. Then they'd show 10 seconds of video, and they would go on one after another for 2 hours telling you what you're supposed to see in the video. They treat you like you're not able to make any kind of judgment calls yourself. And then there's hundreds of other examples. We could go on and name one right after another that follows the same pattern. So maybe it's time to take a look at God's judgment process and do a little comparing to the devil system we see all over the world today. But to tell you what, I think we reached the limit in our time for today. And taking a deeper look into God's judgment system is a subject for another video. So don't forget to like, don't forget to share, what do they call it? Subscribe. Yeah, so you don't miss another video. Anyway, always keep on praying, always keep on listening to God. Remember, 90% of prayer is listening. So keep that in mind.